moving on now, question number 6 has come in here from Anita. Hi there, Anita. Thanks for joining us on the webinar and for submitting your question here. So Anita's question is, what should I do if I'm struggling to pay my rent due to a change in my personal financial circumstances? What option do I have? I'm worried about getting kicked out of my home, but the stress of trying to balance everything is all getting a little too much for me at the moment. But then, Anita, well, I'm sorry to hear that you're in that sort of predicament. And as a tenant in a property, look, I really understand where you're coming from, because I've actually had tenants in a similar situation to you in the past. And the sort of guidance I'm going to give you on this one, Anita, is what I would want as a landlord. Okay. Now, when you're in these situations, Anita, it can feel really overwhelming. That's the first thing. And the reason it feels overwhelming is that we get carried away with fear, and fear can do all sorts of things to us. It can play a lot of tricks on our mind and cause us to imagine all sorts of scenarios that fundamentally won't happen. And you've highlighted one here, is that you're worried about getting kicked out of your home and all the rest of it. It can be a natural response based on the situation that you're in. And what I used to say to all of my tenants was, before I had a letting agent on board, I would meet the tenant at the property, and if I got on well with them and I liked them and I thought, yeah, that could be a really tenant for the property, I would say to them, look, I only have one rule, okay, and that is, I have a mortgage on property, okay, that mortgage needs to be paid every single month, and one of the things that you need to do is you need to pay the rent on time in full every single month, okay? If you don't do that, then the bank's going to come down on me, I'm going to come down on you, and that's where we're at. Is that fair? Okay, and most people understand it's not the greedy landlord just looking for, rent every single month. Actually, there is a liability that needs to be paid, and that's what causes the issue and the frustration from a landlord's perspective. Now, what I will say to that, Anita, is that if you can't pay the full rent, as sometimes happens, then something is better than nothing. And what a lot of tenants do is they go, oh, I can't pay, £800 a month or £600 a month, or I can't pay £1,000 a month. So what I'll actually do is I won't pay anything. All right. And that causes massive issues to the landlord, who all of a sudden was expecting to get the rent on the first of the month or at the end of the month, and that rent doesn't arrive, but their lender still wants them to make a payment every single month. Okay, so now they've got like a £600,000, £6,800 or £1,000 shortfall in their cash flow, and that's what starts to breed the problems. So the first question or the first thing to address, Anita, in your situation is to say to yourself, well, okay, I can't afford to pay the full amount, but I can afford to pay something rather than nothing. And what that does is that shows willingness and commitment from your side. You're not burying your head in the sand. You're not saying, oh, God, I hope this problem will go away. You're not ignoring the phone calls. You're actually taking the bull by the horns and going, do you know what? I'm in a bit of a difficult position for whatever reason. This is kind of what's happened in my life. I'm trying to sort things out. I can't afford to pay the full amount, but what I can afford to pay is X. Okay. Now, if that's a short-term situation and you're a good tenant otherwise, Anita, the landlord might do what I've done in the past, which is to actually work with you as a tenant to help you get through this tough period and get things back on track. And then you make up the arrears at a later date, like £50 a month or whatever it might be. Okay. I've done that with a couple of tenants in the past. It's worked really, really well. And what it's done, it's strengthened the relationship between me and the tenant, where they know that they've got those sorts of problems. They can call on me and we can resolve them. So I'll give you an example. Steve, one of my tenants, one of my very first tenants, was a lovely, lovely, lovely guy, dead straight. Him and his girlfriend moved into the property, and they were there, I think, for about 5 years. And during that course of time, they had like 3 kids or something. And there was one or two of these things where sometimes he had work or he didn't, and we just managed the relationship. Okay. And then one day he said, look, I've got to move out the property because I've got too many kids and we've got too much stuff and I need a bigger place. Have you got anything else we can move into? Because you'd be great. I said, I'm sorry, I haven't. But, wish you the best of luck. If you need to go, don't worry about it. You go. His exact words were to me, I feel like I'm stabbing you in the back by moving. I really want to stay with you. I said, look, Steve, you've got to do what's right for you. Feel free to move. Not a problem. Get on with it. It's fine by me. All right. So 3 or 4 weeks later, they found a property that they wanted to move into. They gave the notice. I said, no problem. Just move when you need to. Just hand the keys back to the letting agent, and we'll get on with it. And he then moved into the property and called me later on that afternoon and said, I'm really sorry, we've made a massive mistake. I said, what's gone on? And he said the property we've moved into, didn't realize at the time, it's got black mold because there was all furniture in the property that was put up against the walls and that sort of thing. Now that furniture's gone, we can see there's black mold everywhere. We don't want to live in the house. We're petrified that it's going to have massive health issues for our kids. Can we move back into the house that we've just moved out of, i.e. your house? I was like, well, of course you can, Steve, no problem at all. You've been a great tenant. I'd love to have you back, and for however long it is. And he said, well, I'd love to do that, but because I've spent my deposit on this property, I don't have the money for this month's rent. I said, look, Steve, get yourself moved in, get yourself settled. We'll sort all of that out at a later date, okay? I know you're good for it. That's the kind of relationship that I want to have with you, okay? And we could do that because there was honesty and transparency between the two of us, and he was just so grateful and thankful for it all. And I'm not saying that to boast or brag, but those are the sorts of scenarios where you genuinely help genuinely nice people in these sorts of scenarios, Anita. And hopefully, you've got a landlord that will be understanding of your current situation. And don't forget, there are many other tenants out there now who will also be feeling the squeeze. So the dilemma that the landlord's in effect is, do they get you out of the property, which at the moment is taking probably 12 months to get a tenant out of a property now, and that's even if they're not paying a single penny in rent. Okay, so they've got to go through that arduous process. Or do they look to cut a deal with you that keeps you in the property, keeps you paying some element of rent, and hope that they can work things out over the medium to long term? If I was a landlord, I'd take an option 2 every day of the week. Okay, so hopefully they've got a letting agent involved that can act as a middleman, if you like, between you and the landlord. And I would just ring them up. I'd have the conversation. I'd just say, look, I'm really sorry to do this, but this is my situation. I really want to straighten things out. This is what I can do. This is what I can afford, or I'm waiting for emergency housing from the council, or whatever your circumstances might be. And I think forewarned is forearmed. So if you can do that and you can put that information in the hands of the letting agent, it's really going to help them to help you and help the landlord. Okay, the worst thing you can do is bury your head in the sand and get really scared about this situation and make all sorts of scenarios up in your head, which ultimately aren't going to serve you, and they're not going to serve the landlord. And that's when things spiral out of all control, and people end up getting really, really upset. Okay, so definitely have that conversation. Put your cards on the table. Look for some help and advice. And I think you'll find that they're, really supportive in dealing with it. You can speak to a local council if you're struggling with the particular property, and if your circumstances have changed that much, Anita, you may have a housing department within the local authority. They may call it different things, but it's really the housing department you want to talk to and see if they can offer some kind of emergency accommodation. Usually, what I've found in my experience, Anita, is that councils aren't. How do I put this gently? They're not particularly gentlemanly in the way that they conduct themselves, because what they say is that they won't offer you emergency housing if you make yourself intentionally homeless by moving out of the property. And what that means is it's code for the landlord's got to evict you before they will allocate you a property. And I had this happen with one of the tenants on the very first property that I bought to rent out. Again, lady moved into that one, lovely, lovely lady, got on really, really well. And her situation was she was in that property for about 4 or 5 years, and her son came of age and became 18, and they stopped paying housing benefit at the full amount and reduced it down by something like, I don't know, it was like 120 quid a month, which meant she couldn't afford the full rent for the property. She was very upfront, she was very open and honest, as I've sort of outlined earlier in the question, Anita. And what she said was, I'm really sorry, I can't afford to pay you. This is what's happened. Housing benefits been cut. I can't then afford to pay you full rent for the property. This is what I can pay because that's what I've actually got. And she said, I've spoken to the council, and the council have said they'll only give me a home if you evict me from the property. Okay, so I was like, okay, so I've got to serve you notice and I've got to apply for eviction of you from the property. And she's like, yes, that's exactly what's got to happen. And this lady actually had I think it was a care worker that worked with her as well, and she was getting really, really worked up about it. I said, look, I don't really want to do this to you, Lisa. Her name was, but if that's the only way that we're going to get around this. And in the end, what happened was I served notice, and the notice was ticking down. And then I wrote to her and the council and said, you need to resolve this issue because it's going to look a bit embarrassing when we've got a single mother with 2 kids that's now about to be kicked out onto the street. And as time ticked on, what they actually did was they did an about turn at the sort of 11th hour, and they said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to backdate the housing benefit payment, and we're going to pay the normal rates now going forward because we haven't got any housing to put her into if you evict her from the property. All right, so that's actually what happened, and she stayed in the property then for another 2 years afterwards under that relationship, which was great to see. So you might be surprised, Anita, you might get a scenario that unfolds in the background that will really help you, but obviously it just feels a bit overwhelming when you're in this at the moment. So don't let it get to you. Be proactive, take action. If there's anything we can do to support you, Anita, let me know. But I think you'll be pleasantly surprised about how this will work out. I do believe in the goodness of people. I do believe in passion, and I do believe in people wanting to do the right things to help others, particularly when they're in difficult positions. And as I say, you won't be on your own. Not that that's any comfort in this moment in time, but see where it leads you to. I always believe that if things will always work out, they'll always find a way, and things will always work out for the best. So wishing you the best with that, Anita, and anything else we can do, let me know. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, that's been the end of today's webinar. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. We're here every week doing these. I absolutely love being able to address some of your questions here and share some knowledge and advice, which I hope you find useful and entertaining. If nothing else, if you want to submit your question to us, you can do so. Send it through to us via email, which is happytohelp@WiggyWam.co.uk. That's happytohelp@WiggyWam.co.uk. You can also send it through to us on Twitter or Instagram. Handle is @WiggyWam_UK. That's @WiggyWam_UK. Or you can go to our website, which is www.wiggywam.co.uk. That's wiggywam.co.uk, where you can sign up. You can set up a profile on that website and send us your questions through there as well, which would be amazing. So, as I say, guys, wishing you all the very best of luck this week and going forward. I hope you're going to get some time out for your summer holidays as well. Hopefully the weather will pick up and will be even more glorious now than we've had over the course of the last couple of weeks. And if there's anything we can do from WiggyWam to help and support you in your journey, it would be our pleasure to do so. So thanks ever so much indeed for joining, guys, and wishing you all the very best of luck in the future. Good night and God bless. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.